Today, I'm going to be talking to Chayla Sherrod, who started off with environmental science, but ended up as a first year corporate associate at one of the five biggest law firms in the country. You definitely want to make sure you're tuned in today so that you can figure out how she went from science to purpose. Welcome, Shayla. It is so nice to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Loretta.
Listen, it's a pleasure to talk to somebody who has lived such a full life in not a lot of years. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Chayla. I'm originally from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I was born and raised there, and I first left Bridgeport to go to college at Villanova in Pennsylvania. At Villanova, I studied environmental studies and political science and was involved in a number of activities with administration, student life, etc. And then when it was time to graduate, I was thinking about what I wanted to do. And at that point, I didn't want to be a lawyer just yet. I wanted to travel a bit and kind of identify where my real interests really were. And so I was fortunate enough to receive a Fulbright fellowship and travel to Namibia for a year and studying communal conservation. And then after I got back from the most incredible year of my life, I was fortunate enough to get into law school, went to Penn, and graduated from there. And now I'm ending up at the law firm, really of my dreams, doing corporate law work. And I've been here for just over 4 months, but it's been a busy 4 months and an exciting 4 months to say the least. So
Let me back up here. You spent a year in Namibia not even doing anything about law, but you said it was the time of your life. But once you got back
yes,
here, you wanted to study law. How did those two happen?
yeah. So, I think in college, one thing that I found in all of the classes I was in, all the work that I was doing, was that everything was like rooted in policy. It was rooted in legislation. It was rooted in what you can and cannot do. And I felt that when I was in Namibia studying communal conservation, which is much more community focused, it's the preservation of natural resources. It all boiled down to legislation, laws, or the lack thereof. And I'd make progress in my research and then find out, oh, there's some law that won't allow you to do this. Or I make progress in my research and say, oh man, these people have been abused and taken advantage of, and there should be a law that would, curtail this behavior. And so it all came back to needing a strong understanding and foundation of the legal policies at work. And I think when I saw it so interconnected with an area like the environment, which I was so interested in, it made me want to be more knowledgeable about the law and see, why laws end up the way that they do. And I think that's kind of what led me to law school. So my time in Namibia, outside of the more personal development, I think more in career development, it really led me to want to be a lawyer, want to be a change maker, and see how that would manifest in America. Because of course, America and Namibia are two very different places, but it definitely laid that foundation for me. Even though I had a little bit of an indication that I could be a lawyer, throughout college, that really kind of solidified my interest in going to law school.
I think it's important that you made the connection. Hey, these are roadblocks put in people's ways, and I feel like I want to know why. And you took that and was like, instead of just finding out why, let me figure out law. And in doing so, you made your way to law school, graduated law school, and now you're a first year corporate law associate. How exactly did you get there, specifically at the place that you always wanted to be at?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer only because I have a lot of faith and I'm a big, big believer in things working out for you, which is a mixture of hard work, but also a divine like destiny that God has for you. So I always say like, I ended up here because I think I worked really hard and I made the right moves, but I think I was led to make the right moves. I think the biggest thing I would say is, you kind of have to really run your own race and find out what's important to you, not really be swayed by the people that are around you and be intentional. So when you come into law school and you think, I want to go into big law, I want to be a lawyer, that's connecting with other lawyers, that's attending networking events, that's doing good in the classroom, meeting professors. It's a lot of that kind of busy work of getting around the right people, getting around the right mentorship, and then putting yourself out there is, I think, a big thing as well. So if you want a job as a big law lawyer, your first summer of law school, you want to get in there, you want to be working at a firm, you want to be making those connections. And also not necessarily having a plan that always feels so far out. Like people always say, like, what's your 5 year plan? What's your 10 year plan? And like, I've always operated on like a 1 to 2 year plan, like where do I want to be in the next year? or the next 2 years. And I think that's much more manageable. And so when I started law school, I was like, where do I want to be at the half point of law school? What do I want to do? Who do I want to meet? And I think that was able to really guide me to the place that I wanted to be in. But a big part of it is putting yourself out there.
You said something really important. Not really looking at it because I get it too. What do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you see yourself doing in 10 years? Taking that and making it a little bit smaller and taking it in a bite sized piece will help you get where you need to go. Sometimes you just need to know the 2 or 3 steps in front of you and not necessarily, the whole mile in front of you. Now, we had a conversation before, and I know you deal a lot with structuring and planning out. And I know that you had to plan your way through law school and to become, the first year associate where you are now. What would you say to somebody who's struggling a little bit with getting their ducks in a row and planning out things and making sure they are a little bit more structured?
Yeah, I would say first off, I would really try to start having routines that aren't necessarily always tailored to like a career development goal or a career progress. Like try to become a more routine person in whatever that looks like. So if it's like I want to wake up at this time of day every single day and have this type of meal every single morning and then I take this break at this time of the day, allowing yourself to work in a routine that doesn't feel so focused on like a career objective or talking to someone, getting on a networking call will allow you to kind of train your mind to be more disciplined. And in doing so with the things that feel less motivated by your career or wanting to accomplish something in terms of like professional networking or whatever, if you focus on those more personal things, your life will become so much more structured that now the things you're adding into it will have to fit in and it'll become structure like by its nature. So for the people who struggle with like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm doing like 4 networking calls a week, or I want to make sure that I'm hitting my to-do list. Start off slowly, like, schedule in meditation, schedule in a phone call with like your friend or your parent. And then also try to find a mentor in some way who can check in with you or an accountability partner, whether it's a friend or someone that you look up to. I think that's really important. Like I was fortunate to have a lot of other Black women who were in law or at my college or one of my sorority sisters who I could say, okay, I want to make sure that every week I'm hitting one thing on my to-do list. Can you check in with me every Friday to make sure that I did it? I think true friendship and true accountability is key, where people are like, okay, no, you didn't do it, like be better. I think when you have that person to bounce ideas off of, that can be helpful. So I think probably either method of just trying to become more routine in your daily life in general, and then maybe having like an accountability partner to help you get there.
I think this is the first time that an accountability partner has really come up in conversation. And I know that there are some people like, oh, well, I don't want somebody getting on me or nagging me. You really saw the beauty of it in having a person who cared about you and cared about your progress, correct?
Yes, yes. I think it's important. I have the best parents, of the best, family. I'm grateful for them. But, my parents didn't go to college. They don't really have the more corporate experience, I would say. And so I really sought out mentors that could really like dig into the goals that I had and hold me accountable for where I wanted to be, because it would take so much of my own work and my own like preparation to get to the point that I wanted to be at. And so I think that's also important. It's kind of taking a chance on yourself, like putting yourself out there. Like no one just wakes up and becomes like an accomplished person. There's always like someone at the beginning that kind of got them to where they wanted to be. And I think everyone needs it. For me, it was really, really key because I knew the goals that I had for myself, and I knew that I needed people who could help me get there. Because I didn't have the exposure that, everyone else maybe has to this type of work environment. So that was important to me.
I think that it's also important, like you said, that if you know you don't have family members who have had this specific experience, maybe you're worked in trades or maybe your parents are, other paraprofessionals, and you really want to go a little bit higher, it's good to get somebody who's been kind of in that circle so that they can kind of help you navigate those waters. So you networked your way into a really good position, and now you are currently where you are. Can you say that you've always had your sights set on this one particular firm doing this exact same thing that you've wanted to do?
I think so. I think so. So of course, I talked about how like being in Namibia really like kind of launched me to want to go to law school and becoming a lawyer. But the first like real job, which wasn't paid, but real job I ever had was I interned at a law firm in my home city of Bridgeport. at an all black law firm under a black woman. And I think like when I was there and I saw her, the way she was moving around, like her demeanor, her disposition, like the work she was doing, the people she was helping, um, I think it really created a picture like I literally look like her and I could be like her. And I always had that in the back of my mind, right? Like I'm someone who I can be very assertive. I like structure. I like getting things done. I like thinking. I like problem solving. Um, and so that was always on my mind and I think inspired me to be where I am today. I didn't think that I would be at like the number five law firm in the country working at in a huge building in the middle of Manhattan, like, you know, with getting paid, I think a pretty great salary for someone right out of law school and like all these blessings that I've been afforded. Because, you know, things just don't seem that big at some points in your life. Right. So, I knew I always had goals and aspirations, but I think being here, it's not lost on me like what this means. I think it was a product of, you know, going to a great law school, meeting the right people, like being fortunate enough to get an interview position, like things like that. So, yeah, I would say I always wanted to be in a position like this. I think I just didn't know the steps to get there, which there's beauty in, but yeah, you just don't know all the time.
I think that you kind of envisioned yourself there, and that gave way for everything to conspire to get you there.
Yeah,
Because you were at and I would say that that's kind of like a unicorn. You were at an all black firm under a black woman, and you really got to see, I could be in her shoes. I could do
right,
that. So I think
right,
that just seeing it, and even if you don't have it around you, I would say to people outside, even if you don't have it around you, just seeing it or writing it out or, taking out cutouts from a magazine and posting them somewhere, kind of vision
right.
board, you can see yourself being in that position. And lo and behold, here you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
How are you balancing your day to day regular life and being in big law? How are you balancing that?
Yeah, that's tricky. And I think when I talk to a lot of law students or people who are interested in becoming a lawyer, a big law lawyer, I always tell them, right, there's a certain level of sacrifice that you have. And I think that can be tricky because not every day looks different, right? Like yesterday, I was able to have my evening and I was able to like have a meal and clean my apartment, like, you know, and then there's a week in January where I couldn't leave my desk, you know, and I was like constantly working, constantly all day sitting there and kind of going through it. Um, and so I think what I try to do in terms of balancing my day to day is just always slating in time for rest, making sure that if I can't get something done on a Monday, I find time to get it done on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. Um, and I think just being comfortable with the unpredictability of the job. I think that's a big thing for many first years. We come in and we're like, okay, we're going to be done by 5, have our evenings. And then that like doesn't happen. So I think I just try to like find the time that works or be really flexible with my time, but always slating in time for like self-care and rest, even if it's for like 10 minutes out of the day or 10 minutes in the morning. Just kind of writing everything out, scheduling everything out to the best of my abilities is what I kind of go for. So
Okay, so you said you've been there for about 4 months, so you're almost what we would consider fresh out of law school. From being in and now being out, what do you think is one of the biggest or most common misconceptions for people who have graduated thinking that they're going to go, directly in and land this big role?
yeah, I think the common misconception is that you'll get a job. Like, I think, and I think that's important to know because we are going to these schools. We're especially grad school. You're going to grad school to get another degree to make yourself more competitive to get a job, and that's fine to say, right? Like everyone wants a job. We need to live. We need to take care of ourselves. I think that people go into like grad school, law school in particular, and they say, okay, I'm going to get a job right out of it. It's going to be at a great law firm. It's going to be amazing, but there's so many other factors at play, right? Like it's the school you go to, it's the region that you're in, it's the people that you know, it's when you apply, it's, you know, who's on the hiring committee at the time you're applying, it's the cycle, it's the market. Like there's all these things that are at play. So I think people kind of come in, especially folks who are blessed to go to a top law school, they kind of rest on their laurels in a way and say, oh, I'm at Harvard, so like, or I'm at Penn, so I'm going to get a job for sure. But there's so much of the work you have to do in your own self to get to that position where you're offered a job, you have options for a job. And so you kind of have to continue to rely on your own strength and your abilities to get to where you want to be. Like it doesn't just come easy because you went to a law school or went to a good law school. That is, especially for folks of color. Of course, I think like big law firms they need Black lawyers. Like because if someone told me I have a law firm I want you to come to, there's not a single Black lawyer, I'm not going to want to go to that law firm, speaking candidly, because I want to be in a community. So they do need us, but there's still a big part of it of us getting to the point where we show ourselves well, we come off as a good candidate, and they want us to come to their law firm. So I think that's a big misconception that everyone gets a job, everyone ends up exactly where they want to be, but it is competitive, right? And you have to kind of show yourself and be kind of assertive with what you want. And I think I tell a lot of people that when they're in law school and looking for jobs or thinking about the career in general.
You mentioned being a good candidate. What would you say to someone who's kind of getting ready to go into this and they, or even, before they get there? What would you say makes someone a good candidate for, a law firm such as yours or another one that's identical?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, this is I was just talking about this because I think in order to do a good job at a law firm, it's like it's those kind of characteristics of being responsive, being like, organized, being available, kind of like all those things that a law firm needs you to be. Like they need us to be available, they need us to work, they need us to respond. But I think being a good candidate for a position at a big law firm, I think is really focused on like expressing who you are in a way that leads an interviewer or a law firm to say, "Oh, we need this type of person here." And I think a good candidate for the job is someone who takes their experiences, says, "I've done all these things. It shaped me to become this person, and this is how I contribute to your environment. And this is why I want to contribute to your environment." So I think a good candidate is someone who has an idea of who they are. They like don't shy away from expressing their identity to someone who's in the position to hire them. Someone who's like done the interesting things in law school, taken a number of different classes. Kind of those components of a candidate I think are key because if you really think about it, everyone's coming in with the accolades on paper. Like everyone went to a good law school. Everyone knows how to like write an email. Everyone knows how to be organized. Everyone, those things, like we're all going to be like that. So I think setting yourself apart is expressing more of like your attributes and your experiences that help you contribute to the environment in a really unique way, I think is key.
So not being from the cookie cutter factory, but showing your individual, characteristic that you bring to someone else's firm. Those are the people that really make you stand out. Like you said, everybody can write an email, but we need to know how organized you are or what you specifically bring to this particular law firm.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, and just to build upon it, give you an example, it's like, I feel like someone like me, like I think again, I've been blessed to do well in law school and et cetera, and I can write an email and do all those things. But someone like me is going to come in and say, okay, how do we create room for the pipeline of other Black lawyers to come in? I'm going to get involved in pro bono this way. I'm going to make sure that the Black law students at Penn know that there's spots for them here. I'm going to go to the recruiting event and tell people to apply for this position. I'm going to send your application to the hiring partner and say, look at this person's application. Like you're going to create the space for other people or like or add value is something I think is really important for candidates to think about. So yeah, I'm thinking about that a lot lately, but that's what I would say.
Definitely holding the door open for the people who come behind you. Like there was the one lady that you got to kind of watch and see what she was doing. Now you're in that position where you can also say, "Hey, I know I'm the only one over here, but we welcome you to come and join us." That says a lot about not just the lawyer themselves, but also the firm, because everybody knows, we need different voices, we need different opinions, and what better way to get them than by opening ourselves up and allowing in some other people that may not look like us, but definitely bring something to the table. Hmm,
Right. Right.
I
Yeah. I
like
think
that.
it's key. I think it's key. I think it's key. I just think we've all been blessed to have someone who's opened the door for us. So it's like literally the least you could do for someone else.
Absolutely. So you went to Namibia, you studied environmental science, and I'm trying to figure out, can you still merge the two? So are you still doing things in environmental science as well as doing law things all at the same time?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's tricky because the environment is a very niche part of the law, and niche meaning that if you really dig into it, it's a huge field, but the actual work that you be doing in the huge field is going to be very specific. And so there's like environmental law firms like Beveridge and Diamond, a few others that just do environmental law work, right? And I'm at a big law firm, kind of a more generalist law firm. And so my work is just it's in the corporate group kind of as an umbrella, and I'm in the M&A group under the umbrella, and in the M&A group under the umbrella there's environmental components. And so I'm like kind of doing somewhat of environmental work, right? Like I was on a really cool infrastructure deal with solar companies. I've done some construction work projects, doing the contracting and deal financing. And so in a way, when you're working on, let's say, a more M&A corporate type of project, you're still looking at environmental compliance rules, you're looking at diligence, you're looking at is this company meeting the FERC regulations? So you're kind of doing environmental work. Is it as community focused as I was doing in Namibia? No, but I was also there doing my own research project and kind of like leading the assignment the way that I wanted to be leading it. But I do have, goals and plans to kind of branch out and maybe do more specific environmental work at some point, maybe my next rotation, or we'll see. So it's definitely different than what I was doing before, but there's still kind of those touch points on the field that are keeping me like, a little more awake at the table, right? Because I'm like, I see some words that I am familiar with, there are concepts I'm familiar with. And so that's kind of exciting.
I was wondering, would you go back to Namibia to now kind of lobby for some change since now you've got the law degree?
Yeah, I would love to. So, like, one of the for Fulbright, when you're doing research, you have to get affiliation support. So, a company or organization on the ground has to say, "Yeah, we agree to this project." So, one organization I had an affiliation support from is the Legal Assistance Center, and it's pretty much a center of lawyers, not many, maybe like 4 to 5 lawyers who literally open their doors and they say, if you're a Namibian and you have an issue, you come here, we'll talk about it, we'll see if we can support you, we'll see if we can represent you, etc. And so I would love to be a part of kind of an organization like that where I come in and just do some advisory, help for different, problems that Namibians face. Particularly there, it's more of like land rights and human rights type of issue. So on the more land rights side, it'd be really cool. And just I think when you come back and you have, influence in general, I think, and that's a whole separate topic, like being a Black American going to an African country comes with different perceptions of affluence and power and et cetera. But I mean, just having that perspective coming over and saying, I was here before, I went back to where I'm from, now I'm back again, and I have, more resources, more financial resources to assist. I would love to be a part of like, an organization like that because there is so much work to be done. And it's a very nutrient resource rich country, and there's already so many talks of development and construction from other foreign countries. And so, you want to protect the rights of the people who've been on the land and deserve to be there. So I'd love to be a part of that. So yeah, I hope so. I hope so. I need to take a flight and get down there.
Yeah, I definitely could see you doing something like that in the future. We're not looking 10 years from now, but definitely in the future, I can see you kind of helping somebody out. So let's say there's a 1L or somebody who's thinking of law school, but they also have this other passion, but they're more so leaning toward figuring out, just like you did with the laws of that passion. What would you say to somebody who's kind of on the fence about law school or where they need to be in law school?
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you're on the fence about going to law school, I think it's some important questions to ask yourself is, one, like, do I want to be a lawyer? That's one thing. I say that because I have friends who come in who are maybe thinking about business and they're like MBA or JD, and it's like if you want to be in business, like get an MBA. Don't become a lawyer to get into business. Uh, so think about that and be really critical about what your end goal looks like. I think also think about the kind of financial implications of going to law school, right? So can you afford it? Also think about like, do I actually want to be a lawyer? Like, I think that's a big thing. I think it sounds glamorous. Like you tell someone I'm a lawyer, they're going to say, oh, wow, that's so cool. Like, that's so impressive. And it's like, yeah, but do I actually want to do the work of a lawyer? So I think that's key to be critical with yourself about whether or not law school is really for you.
So thinking about, do I want to be a lawyer? What does a typical week look like for a first year associate?
Yeah. So typical week is if you're on a deal. So let's say you're like in the M&A group and you're on a deal, you will likely be turning comments a lot a lot of phone calls, a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of sending out calendar invites. You'll be working on agreements. You'll be responding to client emails that come in, client calls that come in, a lot of monitoring emails, setting up organized files and drives. You know, you're kind of your job is to be available and to kind of constantly have your availability pretty like open for what can come in. Like you just never know when you're gonna get a call. Like I got a call a few minutes ago, you know, it's just like you just never know what could happen. So I think it just depends on your deal flow. You know, sometimes you might be really, really quiet in the morning, but then in the afternoons it gets really busy. It just depends on what you're on, how many deals you're on, the type of partner you're working under, if they're someone who likes kind of constant communication, constant correspondence. So it just depends really, but typically you're going to be working on contracts, working on agreements, working on documents and things of that nature.
Just wanted to make sure that somebody out there who was thinking about it could get like a little bit of a peek.
Yeah.
You're going to be busy. You're going to
Yes.
be busy. Forget that I'm going home at 5 o'clock, because that's not always true.
Yes.
True. Listen, Chayla, I have had an amazing time talking to you and learning about Namibia, because maybe we might need to trip. But thank you so much for being on with me today. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Of course, such a pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. It was great.